Oh, nice.
That's nice.
Thank you for coming tonight to hear the Nativity story from the main character's perspective. And as most of you know, Christine, our former minister, she wrote this book last year, and I think it's a cracking little book. We're delighted to bring to you the Nativity's Who's Who by Christine Syme.
A long time before the very first Christmas, around 2,000 years ago, preparations were already happening. A little bit like today, but not too much. This wasn't about shopping and lists. This was something much bigger. A long time before the first Christmas. A long way away from where the first Christmas happened. Preparations were being made.
Astronomers were scientists of their day. They studied the skies, the stars, and they recorded facts. These characters in this story are often known as the wise men, considered to be the clever people in their culture.
In a country, maybe it was a place called Persia, now called Iran, an astronomer had gone onto the roof of his house and was looking intently, marvelling at the array of stars, the patterns of the stars that he knew so well. He loved to watch the skies. There was always something new to notice, stars with different light which were visible, or not, depending on the season, the weather, the clouds. He couldn't always see clearly every evening, and he suspected there were things he would be able to see if only he had better equipment. He thought that the people of the future would see more than him, understand more than him. Yet perhaps what he logged tonight would help others, just as the work of astronomers of the past had inspired him. He was about to return to the warmth of his house when something caught his eye. He thought something had changed in the sky he knew so well. Very carefully, he concentrated, looked, and yes, there it was. There was a new star, bright and clear and large.
But that couldn't be.
How could it be?
Had anyone else noticed?
He was on his own that evening. There was no one to share this with, so he simply watched. He mapped it, where it was, and its exact location, and recorded the time he had noticed it.
Facts are important and must be recorded.
He was bursting to share this news with his friends. He wondered if they'd seen it. The very next day he was meeting his best friend, who was also an astronomer, and he couldn't wait to tell him this exciting news. After not very much sleep, he was so excited. He walked into the town square to meet his friend and saw him waiting, sitting on a bench. He was about to run up and tell him about the different night sky he had seen, about this new star, when he noticed there was something different about his friend too. He looked glum, sad even. His news of a possible new star was so exciting, but that would have to wait. Something was wrong, and he needed to listen to his friend first. They chatted, and he discovered his friend had not been watching the sky the previous evening. In fact, his friend was just so fed up that he had stayed inside. He hadn't seen one star.
That really was unusual.
His friend must be really down. His friend said that the world was in a mess. People were fighting everywhere, quarrels and worries. What was the world coming to? He was so sad and said he wanted to hear some good news for a change. Now, thought his friend, now was the time to share his news that would lift his friend's head and bring a spark to those eyes again. He pulled himself up straight and started.
I was watching the sky, and I know it sounds weird, but I saw a new star.
His friend did indeed lift his head.
A new star? How? Are you sure?
In truth, he wasn't very sure now. Maybe he had imagined it, and he said as much.
I'm not 100% sure, but I mapped it. Come round this evening and we can look together.
If there was no sign of the star, at least there would be company for his friend, and, well, maybe, just maybe, there would be an exciting discovery. That evening they went onto the roof and they looked. Everything was there in place, of course, and there, just where he had mapped it, a new star. Well, it was pretty much in the same place, though not exactly. Maybe he had got last night's mapping a little wrong. He'd been very excited after all, but it was there. Their conversation that whole night and into the morning was all about this new star. The following few evenings they met. Every evening they watched. It was definitely there, but it was also definitely moving.
That was not normal.
They imagined all the papers they could write, the fame they would have, but they also kept coming back to the same question.
What does this mean?
How?
Why?
After a week or so, when they were very sure, they decided to go to another friend, an older astronomer. They decided to go to someone who had taught them, helped them learn, and they would ask him if he knew what this new star meant.
They chapped the door and were welcomed in. The older man loved to have visits from younger friends. They cheered him up, brought him news, made his day, and they got round very quickly to their story. The wise teacher listened. He never spoke as their excitement about the star spilled out. Then, eventually, the chatter ceased. There was silence. The older astronomer paused. Then he asked,
You say it is moving.
Yes,
they replied.
but not quickly. It's not at all like a shooting star that's there one moment and gone the next, but it is moving.
More excited chatter as they were caught up again in their news. Then they stopped again,
Do you know what this could be?
I think I do.
was the reply.
This is a natal star.
They looked blank.
Natal means birth. This star is a sign of a new king in our world, an important king. The star is moving. It will lead whoever follows it to that king.
Where will that be?
No idea.
And the younger men looked at each other.
Could they? Should they? Yes, of course they could. And they most definitely would. We can take a little time off. We can follow the star and meet this important new king.
And in the mind of the second astronomer, a thought, a hope. Maybe this new king will rule well and bring hope and peace to our world. Maybe he'll bring an end to the suffering and sadness and hurt. The first astronomer was up on his feet and exclaimed,
If there is a new star, this must be important. We will go and greet this new king, make friends with him and the nation he rules.
The older man saw their looks and knew what they were thinking, as older people so often do.
I want to come too.
He said, but
I want to come. I know you think I'm too old. You think that I couldn't manage the journey.
he continued,
You say that the star is moving slowly. So let us watch a few more days, and if it is moving slowly enough, I can keep up. I'll be able to help you on the way. I know other languages and could help with crossing into other countries. My grey hair is a sign of wisdom and experience. I have friends, and I know how to speak with people in authority.
As he said these last words, he looked at the younger men, a look that reminded them of a few incidents not so long ago when they had spoken rather rudely to people in authority. Perhaps they would need the sage advice of their older and wiser friend, so they agreed. The next few nights, all three watched their star. During the days, they prepared to travel. The families were excited and afraid for them, full of questions.
How long will you be away? Who will do your washing?
And the most often asked question,
How will we know where you are?
Watch the star, they replied. Where the star is, that is where we will be.
and they set off on a very long journey. Meanwhile in Nazareth, a family who were much poorer than the astronomers were simply getting on with life.
Working hard, raising their family, looking forward to celebrations to mark the engagement of their daughter, they too had an exciting time ahead. This, of course, was a very different sort of journey, but one they too needed to plan for, one that brought them great hope for the future. Their daughter was called Mary, and she was about mid-teens, maybe a bit older, maybe a bit younger. Her fiancé was called Joseph. He was a carpenter and a very kind, gentle man. Both families worshipped God. They were Israelites.
Israelites believed there was only one God who had made all creation. Other nations around them worshipped many gods. They had a god for the harvest, a different one for the rains, one for spring, different ones for, well, everything. However, the Israelites believed there was only one God who made everything.
Mary and Joseph would be married. Not yet, but soon. A new future was being planned. They would set up their own home, and all was going well. All was going smoothly, apart from the occasional discussion about colours for the wedding, or food. All was going reasonably well, until...
Meanwhile, aware of everything that happens everywhere, God had also been looking at the world. God was looking not just at the sky, and he wasn't just looking at wedding plans. God was looking at the whole world, all of creation. And God saw that it needed help. The people needed help to know how to live together in peace. There were wars, there were people being hurt. Creation was being hurt too. The people of the world needed a bit more help to know what it was God intended for all. They had forgotten. They had become used to having power over others. They were messed up. Some were very rich and powerful. Some were very poor and had no say in their own lives. So God decided that now was the time to add in something new, or rather, someone new. God knew the only one to sort this out was God. The people hadn't listened well enough to the scriptures, not so far anyway.
Scriptures are writings about their faith that explained their history and offered guidance for life.
Nor had they listened to the prophets, not so far anyway.
The prophets are people of God who helped others understand God's way.
God would have to come to earth himself. But he'd have to come in a way that would help people listen, so they would hear and see this better way of living. It would have to be a long-term plan. Patience would be key.
So God had begun his plan.
With astronomers in a far-off land.
And with a young couple in Nazareth.
In Nazareth, the families were looking to the future they were planning. Mary was very faithful to God. She never missed worship, always prayed for others before herself. She was a gentle lass, but with a mind of her own. Mary was no pushover, strong in faith and not afraid to stand her ground.
God knew that if Mary would agree to help in his plan, there was a very good chance it could work.
Joseph was a carpenter, hard-working, faithful to God and loyal. He was a gentle soul, kind, considerate, compassionate. He would look after his family well, always be there for them. There was no doubt about that.
God knew that if Joseph would agree to help in his plan, there was a very good chance it could work.
And when God looked at them together, he smiled. Their love for each other shone bright.
God saw in Mary and Joseph a bond of love, a safe pair of hands, two safe pairs of hands to hold the plan that was in God's mind.
God called for Gabriel, an angel, a messenger for God. Gabriel, God knew, could be trusted with the most important mission, to take a message, a request to Mary. Yet even God didn't know how Mary would respond. She was most definitely her own woman. She would make up her own mind before she replied.
There would be no demand. God would simply ask, but would she say yes? There was no guarantee. However, God decided it was worth the risk.
Gabriel was actually, he was very unsure. Yet he had a message from God. He would deliver it as best he could. And off he went to Nazareth to visit Mary. When Mary turned round and saw Gabriel, she was quite rightly scared.
Gabriel was an angel, and angels are huge according to the Bible. And here was the Archangel Gabriel, a senior angel, standing before her with no one else around to look to for help.
Her mind raced.
What am I seeing?
Gabriel too was a little taken aback. He had had no idea how Mary would respond. Would God have managed to sneak in and give her the heads up? Was he, Gabriel, expected? By the surprised look on her face and the gasp she let out, Gabriel concluded that no, she was obviously not expecting him. So his first words were,
"Don't be afraid, Mary."
Easy for him to say.
"Don't be afraid, Mary."
Mary didn't run. She stayed and she listened closely.
"God needs your help, Mary. Here's the plan. You are, if you agree, going to have a baby. The baby won't be from Joseph. Rather, God himself will be the father. This baby will be a boy, and he will help the world. So, Mary, what do you say?"
Well, not Joseph's, you say? I can see a wee problem there, Gabriel. Telling my parents, the entire village, aware the time to have a baby. To be honest, Gabriel, I can see a few stressful moments ahead, and if they follow the law of our land, then most possibly a stoning.
Stoning was a form of capital punishment of those times, a very cruel death, as stones and rocks were thrown or dropped on the person they believe had done wrong.
Yep, a few concerns there, perhaps, Gabriel. So any more of this plan you care to share, Gabriel? No?
Mary thought quickly.
This will not, could not, happen if it is not from God. That would be impossible, I know that. And so, well, I suppose, no, I don't suppose, I say definitely, yes, God, I'm in.
And Gabriel left. He returned to God, mission accomplished. Mary stood and wondered and thought, what would she be thinking? Maybe Mary thought,
what do I do now? Do I wait and see if I'm carrying a baby, then approach Joseph and my parents? And how? Or do I tell someone now about this encounter? Or keep it to myself in my heart to ponder, wonder, and hold?
Joseph, this committed and faithful fiancé, was also thrown into disarray when he realised Mary was expecting a child. The worry, the gossip. Yet the worry of what people would say was secondary to the love he felt for Mary. They had been together for such a long time. She was everything to him. She wouldn't be unfaithful. She just wouldn't.
Would she?
But he had to do the right thing, the legal thing. The law said, the village said, his family and friends said, they all said, let her go. Joseph decided he would end things with Mary, but he'd do it tomorrow. He would sleep on it. Tomorrow was soon enough. As he slept, Joseph dreamt. His dream brought him peace, brought him to a very different decision. The dream told him that this was God's baby, and that Joseph was also part of God's amazing plan. God needed Joseph as much as God needed Mary.
God needed Joseph to say yes too.
And he did.
Mary and Joseph against the world. Not the sort of start you'd expect for God's son. An unmarried couple, out of favour with the religious authorities, an embarrassment to their families.
Times were very different over 2,000 years ago. How have they changed?
God, meanwhile, sat back and smiled. He wanted to come to earth, but he did not want to come amongst the rich and powerful. Rather, God needed to be with the poor, the worried, and the outcasts. God knew what was best, and with Mary and Joseph on board, the plan was coming together.
Now, a little waiting time, and we all need that. Time for us too to rest, to review, to ponder what has happened to us this week, this month, these past years and more. To think how God is with us, always. God holds us when the world is rough and tough and hard, when it seems the world is against us.
Mary and Joseph would know many struggles, as of course would the astronomers. Do you remember them?
The journey from Persia, Iran, might have been very straightforward if they'd known where they were going. If the star had had a wee name, the name of its destination on it, Bethlehem, then they could have found the best route. They would have known how far and how long and what to pack, but they had no idea. Their journey was like Mary and Joseph's. It was a journey into the unknown.
What does it feel like to not know where you are heading? To be totally dependent on someone else deciding, not just the where to, but how you were to get there?
They were going to be travelling through different countries with different cultures. The older of them wondered if he would make it to their destination. He had never thought how long they might have to travel, but he kept going. He knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime event, and he had waited all his life for such an adventure. Maybe he was keeping the younger ones back, being too slow, yet he knew that without him, they would probably have been turned back long since. His age and patience had opened doors, or had at least negotiated a wee gap for them to pass through. He was seeing places he had only ever heard about from others, but now this was his journey, and even tiredness could not take the edge off his excitement.
Learning new things does that. It makes life exciting, and we're never too old to learn new things.
What was the last new thing you learned? Just make sure it is not the last you ever learn.
They had no idea when they would reach their destination. The only thing to do was to keep following the star.
How long would their journey be? Where would they find themselves?
He had no idea.
None of us do.
Follow the star. The youngest astronomer, the one who had seen the star first, sometimes got a bit impatient.
Can't we go a bit faster?
But it was not only their teacher who moved slowly. The star too was moving slowly. So they had to as well. But their slow pace did give them time to chat, to discuss, to grow even closer together as their friendship strengthened.
Did the star know how important their time together was?
Yet he was still impatient.
Surely we must be close.
He thought, and his favourite phrase,
Are we there yet?
waited on the other two.
And his friend. It often seemed he was in another world, daydreaming, yet never sharing those daydreams with his companions. Deep inside, he was still so concerned about the world around them. Going through other countries, he saw much the same as in his own, the rich and the poor, the powerful and the struggling. He heard that there were huge problems everywhere, and no one, it seemed, no one knew the way through these. No one knew how to solve these problems. Maybe a new king, a king who had such a star. Maybe he would be the one who will rule with justice, bring peace, give him and all hope in and for the world. Maybe.
Sometimes he dared to let his heart, mind and soul hope. But at other times he wondered, maybe they would find another rich family, powerful and strong, who ruled in the same way as everyone else. Maybe this was just a wild goose chase. His mood rose and fell, and his friends watched and worried for him. Sometimes they saw a smile spread across his face and wondered what he was thinking. These were the times he felt hope grow, felt a tug at his heart and mind and soul.
This journey will lead me to the answer.
None of them ever said, "Let's go back." Together they encouraged each other, listened to each other, and continued to find this new king.
Day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. Are you patient? Are there times to push for things to move quicker? Maybe times when the pace needs to slow? Are you, we, always the best ones to decide? Who else might need to be considered? Who else might need a pace different from yours? Why?
Life in the village of Nazareth was hard for Mary. The baby inside her was growing, and folk were very open with their disapproving looks. So she decided to go and visit her cousin, Elizabeth. Mary would escape from all the gossip and share in Elizabeth's excitement, for she too was having a baby. They would have much to talk about, not least because Elizabeth's baby was also unexpected, a huge surprise. She and her husband thought they were too old to have a baby now. Yet Elizabeth's husband, Zechariah, had been told by God that they would have a son, whose name was to be John. A name his parents wouldn't have chosen themselves, but this was God's decision.
This baby's parents, like Mary and Joseph, had been told this would be a very special baby with a very special purpose for God. Imagine their chats, retelling how it was that God had told them what would happen and pondering why God had chosen them.
Discussing what the neighbours were saying, the rumours, the gossip, the hurtful words. It would be happening then just as it still does today. People judging others very quickly and without the full story. Mary stayed with Elizabeth for quite a while before returning to Nazareth to her family and to be with Joseph to wait for the birth of their baby.
But it was not so straightforward even yet. Israel was not in charge of its own country. It was occupied by the Romans, an invading force who were definitely in charge. The Romans had at that time, in the 1st century AD, conquered much of the known world. They were very organised and built many amazing structures such as roads, viaducts, and of course a legal system that kept the people in the lands they conquered under their power. They did not, and no one would, choose to live under occupation under another country's rule. But the people of Israel had to do what they were told by the Romans. If they behaved and paid their taxes and didn't cause any trouble at all, then things were relatively peaceful. However, they were not free and wouldn't be for some time. The people prayed for their freedom, and it would come. Freedom would be theirs, though not in the way they foresaw, nor the freedom they imagined.
When Mary's baby was almost due, the Romans in charge decided to count how many people were in the country. Everyone had to return to the place of their birth, where the counting, called a census, could be done. Mary was from Nazareth, so could she stay in Nazareth? Sadly not, because Joseph was from Bethlehem, so they had to go there. Not too far for us today, around 80 to 90 miles or 150 kilometres, but then there were no cars, buses or trains, just feet. They had to walk, and Mary was about to have a baby.
Joseph's family were descended from King David. Joseph was of David's line or family tree, and their hometown was Bethlehem. Did Mary ever question why God didn't help them then? Why God did not make the journey easier? Why the census had to be now? It was not convenient.
Yet Mary, that strong young woman, set off with Joseph, and it would be slow progress. They would have to stop overnight. Mary would not be able to walk very far before needing a rest. It must have seemed that God's plan was not going so smoothly.
Poor Mary and Joseph.
We at least can now see what was happening. In the scriptures, we hear God tell the people that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem, not Nazareth. And this baby Mary was carrying was indeed the Messiah, the one who would bring freedom from the Romans, from injustice and from oppression.
It seems the Romans became part of God's plan, out of the blue. Mary and Joseph had no option but to travel to Bethlehem, just as God had said. It was the Roman instruction, yet it was exactly what God needed to happen.
Tired and very, very weary, Mary and Joseph got there. Mary and Joseph arrived in Bethlehem, along with everyone else who had been born there. The whole family back together, a bit like our Christmas perhaps. However, there was no possibility to book ahead, no travel agents, no booking.com, no online systems. They had to take their chances along with everyone else. and as they had arrived later than many, there was not a vacancy sign to be seen. A couple, expecting a baby, looking for somewhere to rest, hoping to find a safe place, refugees far from home. Joseph worried for Mary, wanting to do the best for her. Mary worried for her baby, whom she knew would arrive soon, and the baby, well, the baby would be concerned for Mary and Joseph, maybe wanting to let them know not to worry, all would be well. And here they were. If this was God's plan, there had to be some answer to this next part of their journey. But who would give them the time of day? Who would see their problem? Who would try to help? Would they find someone to help?
What of the people today who leave their country, their homes, to find hope, to find peace, to find a welcome? So many in our world are away from their homes and families and need someone to notice, fleeing countries at war where they are persecuted, looking for someone to give them hope, food, a room, someone to see them and not rush by, not close the doors on them. Who are they? Where are they? How do they feel? Will people today find someone to help? What can they do? What can we do?
But what of our wandering astronomers' comfort zone? Would these travellers maybe have preferred to have been at home too, watching the sky each night from their own rooftops? They were not used to being on long, very long, exceptionally long journeys. Yet they were still excited. The star was still moving, and even though they couldn't see it because of the sun and blue skies of daytime, they saw it again at night, as bright and clear as ever. They kept going, keeping track of the days and nights, mapping the star, writing reports, and having huge and deep discussions about who this king might be, where this king might be. From time to time, they would take from their bags the gifts they had bought, gifts they had brought to impress this new king, to help them make friends. They unwrapped the gold and frankincense and myrrh and wondered, would they be used to anoint a new king? A priest? The gifts they would offer were surely the best ever. But had any one of them wondered about the gift the king would give to them? One had. The one who hoped for the world, hoped for a better way of being. The one who travelled to find someone who would be the answer.
There are others to join our story. Not all of them on a long journey. Well, certainly not as long as the astronomers, not even as far as Mary and Joseph. Some were very close to home, close to the village of Bethlehem. They were in the fields.
The shepherds of Bethlehem.
These shepherds were where they always were in the dark of night, out in the hills, protecting the sheep, ready to ward off wild animals, or indeed thieves. What were their hopes for their lives? Maybe a warm bed, maybe to be with their family, especially when they heard family gatherings in full swing in the village, the inns and the hotels full and alive with chatter. Or maybe their longings ran deeper. Maybe they were longing to be free from Roman rule, or maybe longing to get a better wage. Maybe they simply longed to be accepted in the village when they came in from the fields, all smelly and tired. Maybe they simply wanted to be noticed for the people they were. They knew their work was important, and it was dangerous, yet they were taken for granted, barely noticed unless they got too close to someone. Then they were noticed, usually because of the smell of animals and dirt and having been out in the hills and the fields all day. They were so poor. They would always be poor, and the rich didn't care. The strange thing is, they would soon be on a journey too.
A journey they could never have imagined. It was a short journey for them into Bethlehem, yet it was a hard journey into the town, to a place where they were not really wanted. And yet, it was also an easy journey for them, for it took them to a place where animals slept, a place where they also slept sometimes, a place where they really fitted in. It would also be a journey that would change them forever, as they saw, and they were the first to see.
Well, that's for later. In yet another place, quite different from the fields of sheep, there were yet other others. They were royals, living in comfort with all they needed. Well, they had all they thought they needed.
Here in the palace was King Herod. King Herod was important. He had great authority. Herod liked his own way in everything. No one argued with King Herod. King Herod worked with the Romans. He worked with them not because he liked them, but by working with them he was able to keep his position and power and riches. Herod was a fierce king who was cruel, even with his own family. He had thoughts only for himself and could force people to do things, and if they didn't, then they would pay the price. The price was often their life. He was in his palace with good food, soft beds, servants to do what he asked. He ruled with fear, with threats, and did not care about anyone. A man of great power, but not respected, and definitely not liked. Yet his was a power that caused division, power that was not built on trust or loyalty, but built only on fear. His only thought was his own position. He had no real friends, and that can be a very lonely life.
I think Mary and Joseph might have felt a little lonely too, all on their own in Bethlehem when they arrived in the busy town looking for a place to stay. All they could see were "full" signs everywhere. Every door they checked, every person they spoke to, it was the same story. We are full up. There is no room for you here. It seemed as if Mary's baby would be born in the street until someone thought outside the box and outside their usual accommodation block.
Would you consider sharing?
Yes, of course, not ideal, but...
Would you share with the animals?
Mary was a wee bit surprised by this. She paused and looked at Joseph. Had she heard correctly? The question came again.
Would you be okay in where the animals sleep?
Oh, well...
Joseph glanced at Mary.
Would that be okay?
Mary was so tired. Of course.
I just need a place to be. This is their only offer. Yes, yes, please. Thank you so much.
They were shown into a space. It was warm, thanks to the animals. It was quieter than the inns, and it was theirs. A place to rest, a place to be, a place to have her baby.
That same night, Mary gave birth to a baby boy. They called him Jesus, and they were parents.
Parents!
A scary thought, especially with none of their nearest and dearest with them. Yet here he was, their baby boy, as promised. After such a long journey, so afraid if they wouldn't make it to Bethlehem in time, it had all worked out. They were a family. No one else really mattered.
A new baby sweeps through hearts, changes lives, makes a difference from the moment they're born. And it would be no different for Mary and Joseph. As they marvelled at their new son, another journey was being made.
Who?
The shepherds.
The same ones who were unkempt, smelly, and lived out in the fields overnight with the sheep. The shepherds had had a visit that night. A visit of not just one angel,
Like Mary.
but a whole host of them, singing and making such a racket. Amidst all the singing, there had been a message for the shepherds too, a message of great hope. The angels had told them that their Saviour had been born in Bethlehem, very near.
A baby, the Saviour, is born for you.
The angels had said, for you, a new baby born for you. Us?
Shepherds.
Wow. But why did they go to Bethlehem? Simply because. Because they had been told to go and see. And because they wanted to know, hear firsthand, what changes there might be for them. They made their way into the town, past the inns, where they were given that look which said,
You're not coming in here.
No matter, they thought. We don't want to come in there. We want to go in where there's a baby, the Saviour, our Saviour. And that's what they did. They found the place where the animals stayed, where they were readily accepted, where they felt at ease and were welcomed by Mary and by Joseph and by Jesus. They came in and knelt and were stunned into silence. Their gruff voices softened as they spoke. That's when they eventually found their voices. God had arrived where they could meet him in person. God made it happen in a way they felt at home. That's what Jesus brought and brings to all.
the presence of God to each, God at home with everyone.
The other journey
Do you remember our astronomers?
was taking a bit longer than expected, yet they continued with hope in their hearts sometimes. Their determination to discover, to search for knowledge had kept them going and would keep them going. Even though they had travelled through many countries, already their journey would continue.
We don't always get where we want to be when we want to be there. We sometimes make wrong turns, wrong decisions, and so it was, even with these very clever people. The star had now brought them to a very different country. It seemed to them that the star had found its destination and was settling. It had almost stopped now. So the astronomers took their eye off the star nav and went their own way. They discovered there was a palace nearby. That must be where they would find the new king. So they headed straight to Herod's palace to find the new king. The king was surprised by their visit. He knew of no new king. He didn't want to hear about a new king. He, Herod, was the king. He was less than impressed to think someone might be wanting to take his crown, so he tried to deceive the astronomers. He said to them,
"Find the child, then let me know. Then I can take my gifts too."
His only intention was to get rid of anyone who might challenge his power. These clever scientists, however, sussed Herod, and when they did find the star's king, they would certainly not be telling King Herod. In fact, when they were returning home, they took a different route just to avoid him.
Sometimes we don't follow directions very well. We think we know better. And sometimes we need to recognise who to listen to and who to avoid. How do we know who we can trust? The travellers got back on track, this time following the star all the way to Bethlehem, and came to the place where Jesus was, with Jesus' parents, Mary and Joseph. The older man was overwhelmed. Never had he thought he could feel this way. He had brought a gift of gold, a precious metal. This child, however, gave something more precious: love. He saw and he knew that it was not the gold, but this child was the treasure.
The younger man felt all his confidence drained from him. All his knowledge was as nothing. All his agile young mind had learned or could hold was as nothing. Instead, he felt that he was being held with a mercy and humility that swept through him. His original thinking that his gift of myrrh, marking the length of life, the finite life we live, was the best gift. As he looked at this child, all these thoughts melted away, and he felt the infinite life. Beyond this world and time, beyond the stars themselves, there was more. The other astronomer, he felt the tears in his eyes flow down his face, and was not embarrassed, but glad. His heart was full, and joy overflowed, like the tears, the shedding of these tears releasing from him the despair he had felt, making room for the hope he felt given to him from Jesus. His gift of frankincense was to be a sweet offering to the gods, yet the gift from Jesus, from the God, was a blessing of hope that brought peace and joy and love.
Jesus was born in Bethlehem to Mary and Joseph, his parents, who would raise him, care for him. Jesus was visited by the shepherds, wise astronomers. He welcomed them all. He welcomed those who had nothing, those who had everything, those who thought they were nothing, and those who thought they had it all, those who were hope-filled, and those who were sad.
Jesus welcomed them all, and he still does. No matter who you are, no matter what you have or what you have done, Jesus welcomes you and loves you.
So what does this mean for Christians today? Christians make time to stop, to think about the first Christmas, to wonder and smile and know all are welcome. And then bring to Christmas Day,
And every day,
all we are, bringing not what is held in our hands, but what is in our hearts, making space in our hearts and lives for God, letting God make our heart a space and a home where the presence of love is guaranteed.
because the presence of God is guaranteed. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. And thank you to our tech team.
Yes.
Eric for his impeccable timing. And Colin for putting the heating on.